tagged differently from men, and they can get away. Men can get away with a lot of things.
Is the pressure too much on women leaders?
Absolutely. Yes. That's why I started by saying too much. Too much, because what a man would easily get away with, let me say, like corruption. They say, look at this woman. We gave her our money. She's done ABCD with it. But a man, you say, oh no, men normally just steal. It is common. It is normal. So I think for women, let me just say this. I think for women leaders whom we have, and we keep engaging with them and telling them, please, remember how you work will enable me from a far-reach county as Busia to be re-elected, to be elected again. And so we also have to, and I pray that more of these women will come and talk to ladies and also mentor them. Not that there is just this caucuses of women leaders. They want to retain the leadership and not focusing on how many women do we bring on board. And because of that, let me also say this. And she spoke about article, I think that was 81B of the Constitution, which talk about the two-third gender rule and all that. And then we have the affirmative action. So the 47 seats, in my view, should have been a pedestal for women to get into elective position. Where once you've been elected as a woman representative for one term, and it is a proposal that I made, and I hope one day it will be picked, that let it just be a pedestal, period, that we have only one term, so that we have as many women come into leadership through that. Because once you are sent into power for the first 5 years, then you are able to now go and fight it out with men in the single constituencies. Yes.
I want to bring Dr. Lisa here. Dr. Lisa, my question will be, what then becomes the role of men when it comes to bridging this particular gap? Because we live in a society where, you know, a society that involves both men and women. If we need to have women representatives, we can't just, I know to some extent some people will argue and say, oh, the population of women is, you know, it's quite a lot. So why not just, women should just rally behind a woman and vote this particular woman into office? We never get to see that. So what role do men get to play in this particular case?
The media was kind of putting a lot of flashes of queues, long unending queues of white men queuing up from morning, from 9 to 6, waiting just to cast their votes for Trump. This is what happened. And of course, you're in the media, so you know that if the media is showing something, the media has different ways, non-verbal ways of passing on their message. So if you keep bringing something back to the screen, they are trying to pass a message across. So the first thing I was going to say is, where were the women, right? If the men had to stand from 9 to 6 to wait for Trump, where were the women? We are not struggling in terms of the amount of women that we have. No, but the problem is, do we have the support of the women for the women? That's where we're struggling. So when we look at men, what do men have to do? Now, let's bring it back to the context of Africa, of course. African politics is kind of like very money-driven. You know, I'm going to speak also from my own country, which is Nigeria, very money-driven. And so a lot of times when you talk about women who are running for office and why they're struggling, the first thing they say to you is, we didn't have adequate funds, right? And if women continue to wait for men to be the only support that they want to get, sometimes men's support are always conditional. There's something that has to be in an exchange for something. And that's why I'm not sure about Kenya, but in Nigeria, we have cases where someone is running for office right there at the primaries. You are asked to step down and hand over your votes to somebody else. That's because all the support and the sponsorship came from that person, right? So what would men do? Men have to work with us in creating these platforms that I was talking about, that is going to equip not just women, but men have to understand how to work with women so that they get to see that we are not being confrontational, we're not being competitive, We're not here to fight, but how can we work alongside each other? Thank you.
Okay. There's a comment here. Somebody says, and I want you guys to comment on this, but women are the ones causing that gender role problem. In a population where women are more than men, and mostly women turn up to vote more than men, we do expect many women to win elections. In fact, based on their voting trend and numbers, they can vote in a female president without relying on votes of men. This is somebody commenting that, and I believe just narrowing it down to the country. So, and I don't want to use that tag that people normally say, you know, women are their own enemies and all that. We don't use that. But you see, some people out here, and especially men, believe that you have the power, yet you do not embrace that particular power.
We have to understand that a lot of this is also the conditioning that we get as a society. When the society says that the woman belongs in the kitchen or only at home nurturing children, it is not only men who are taught that, but even us women, we are taught that. So sometimes we look at it as us, you know, sabotaging each other. We are not sabotaging each other. We are just displaying what we have been taught in all of us as a society. I say this because we can give an example like colonialism. In colonialism, there was the divide and conquer rule, right? So they were saying, but there was only 3 white people ruling, you know, populations of millions. How did that work? Because everybody was conditioned to believe a certain thing. So the problem is not, oh, women don't like other women. The problem is the mentality or the mindset that we have been raised to have, and that we are fighting to then step out of this mindset. And I would like to strongly say that men are our allies. I don't believe in taking all the women and wrapping them up in one room to vote for anything. That is not the answer. We need men. Just like today, we have learned that when you're raising a child using one parent versus the other, just only with the mother minus the father's influence, has repercussions. The best child is raised when you have both your mother and your father. That is when the child benefits the most. So when it comes to women's issues, men are our allies. We are learning to deconstruct and unlearn a lot of societal expectations, and we need to do this with the men standing right next to us and being our allies. So a lot of women, if I can just give an example about myself, I always say I'm my father's daughter. I was raised by my father because I spent so much time around my father. And one of the things my father always used to tell me is, you know, he used to say, can you think like a man, think like a man. He used to say that, think like a man, you know, everything you do. I remember one time I called him and I'm crying and I'm like, Daddy, I can't do something. And he's like, assuming you are a firstborn son in my home, what would you do with your finances? I was like, oh, okay, well, if you tell me to think that way, then I would organize myself better. I would try to get a promotion. I would try to do all these things because that's what I would do. But here was a man in an African setting who had a daughter who was just trying, and he was just trying to say, you cannot let that bring you down. You have to work hard and put yourself out there and fail. Do it afraid, do it scared, do it without money, but we need men. Men, we have to work this out together. This is not just a women's issue. Okay,
Rachel, another one, say, we don't trust them. We can never trust them. We can never vote a lady in, not that we hate them, but we feel they're still not fit to govern and be astute about their decisions.
Interesting perspective there. I think it all about, in his case, I think it's because of the kind of women that he hangs around. I believe so, because if also, as she's spoken about conditioning of a child, and so that's one of the things where in your family, even a family setup, and every time they want to give out a duty, it's always the man given that duty and the role, the hard ones to do, then he'll be conditioned to think that it is only men who can be leaders, it's only men who can take up very technical tasks and such like thing. But I think we are moving away from that thought. And that's why there's been a lot of focus on the girl child, so that we empower the girls with the rightful skills. We empower the girls financially, so that when they excel in their various areas of expertise, then such like my brother, then they look at women differently. That I have a sister, my own sister, who is the CEO of ABCD. So he'll not speak like that, because from their own family setup, he has a sister who is actually excelling as a CEO or a business person or an entrepreneur and blah, blah, blah. Good. So I think it's just a matter of time as we continue to empower young girls, yes, and giving them exposure and all that kind of stuff, then we'll not be seeing a lot of men thinking that women are not able just because they've not been given an opportunity, you know, to do that. And I'll also challenge him. Why don't you also try to elect a leader who is female in your constituency and in your ward? Then you can now have a comparative decision in the next general election.
All right. Yeah. I'm running out of time, and I want to bring in Dr. Lisa. Dr. Lisa, African Women Audacity Conference. We are, you know, the theme is closing the gender representation gap in nation building. Talk to me about this in just a few minutes as I wind up.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't know I was muted. Thank you so much for that, and for the time to share right here, especially with everything that is happening here. When I say here, I'm talking about now, whether it's in Kenya, whether it's in the world, whether it's in Africa, and the focus really is closing the gender gap. The conference for us that we're going to be holding in Kenya, I would look at it as a transformative avenue, you know, where we've been able to identify a problem, and we have been able to invite leaders to help us to solve this problem by having this high-level conversation, assigning tasks to different people, and looking at how can we move things forward. It was important that we do this. You know, just before when you had asked me questions and I talked about the Beijing plus 30 years down the line, nothing has really happened. And I see that, you know, Kenya, you know, is a country, thanks to President Ruto. One of the things that he did, he involved a lot of women. He created 47 seats as soon as he came in, right, that were just focused on women. He was able to elect 7 governors, and that's a big deal because in my country, we don't even have 1 female governor, so that's a big deal. And I have also seen like the KYPA encouraging a lot more young women to step into politics. Now, there is a lesson for us to learn from Kenya, and that's why we came here, so that we can have an opportunity to converse with the women leaders who are in Kenya, and also other women leaders in different places. Like, what do we do at this time? Why are we still struggling? What do we need to do? We have been around this topic for so long, it doesn't seem like we are succeeding. What do we need to do? And so in the conference, we're going to be dealing with not just the constitutions, which of course, most times when we ask women to run for office in most countries, you know, a lot of the platforms are educating them on the electoral processes. I'm not saying that's not important, but looking at the other things that are lacking, like we talked about the skill gap. What do they need to stay relevant even in office? Because I can bet you that if Kamala had gotten in, the lifespan of her sitting on that seat probably would have been very short. Because, I mean, look at what happened with all of the red states, right? Look at the approach that Trump took when he went in, I mean, to run during the campaign. What did he do? He focused on those states that had, you know, all of the majority of the electoral seats. He had a strategy in place. So that's something that we want to teach women. How do you run and win? So we're bringing in women leaders coming from different places. And then, of course, to spend time with the Kenyan women who are already doing it successfully, that what should we do, especially in those countries who are at 0 level? What do we need to do? Why haven't we moved forward? What is different from the treaty that was signed in 1995, and why are we still lagging behind? So I really encourage everyone to be part of this conversation with us, my sisters who are here, and even you too, because we're inviting men as well to have this much needed conversation and just see how we can forge ahead. Thank you so much.
I do accept that invitation because, of course, I also have to play a role, and that's why I asked what is the role of men in this particular conversation. Thank you so much, Dr. Lisa. I really do appreciate your time, and of course, we are looking forward to having you in the country. And during this particular conference, we'll see you there then. Thank you so much. Final remarks here as I wind up. What's the message that we leave this particular platform with?
The message is very simple. every human being, you and I both, came from a mother.
Okay.
So you had a woman who carried you responsibly until you came into this world. And every child was brought into this world by a father as well.
Okay.
So we need each other in order for us to uplift women. To the women who are already working, we have Wanga, we have Gogo in Rangwe, who I'm so proud of. We have different places, Mili Mabona. We are proud of you. We see what you're doing.
Yeah.
For the women who are there, who are not fighting for the rest of us women who are championing, for women to get a platform, we are coming behind. We are not, like you said, you are a representation for the rest of us, for Rachel who's coming in.
Okay.
So if there's a woman who is sitting there and not fighting to close this gender gap, to give a platform, and to ensure that when the rest of us come in, we get a good reputation, we are not going to allow you to be there.
Okay, we are not going to allow you to be there. Rachel, as you wind up 30 seconds on this, Kenya, you know, from what Dr. Luisa has said, is still coming to learn from this particular country. To some extent, we look inwards and we're like, we haven't done that much. But yet people are looking at it and be like, okay, there's something to learn from here. 30 seconds.
Welia Kiami, I think a Nigerian author, says a small move in the right direction creates hope.
Okay.
So that's, we are actually giving hope to the rest of the African nations that this is achievable, this is doable. Okay. But I want to speak to our parliament that constitutional compliance is not a choice.
All right.
Let them not feel like they're doing us any favor by being compliant. Okay. And I think the president should take it up and ensure that the report that was given by NADCO on how they can bridge the gender gap, that is actually implemented. All right. So that we are people that we don't just have a lot of policies hanging in the shelves, but we are actually implementing them. And it is important also to speak to our women. That it is our time to lead. Right. We are the same people who are leading in these families. Okay. When you teach a lady, then you have taught the community. Right. When you empower a woman, you've empowered the society. Amen. So let's pick it up as women and let's ride with it.
All right, thank you so much for your time here. Of course, Rachel Molo, thank you so much. I do appreciate Shilo Lang. And of course, Dr. Luisa Kaiso for making time for this conversation about women leadership. And we'll continue having these conversations on issues to do with gender and women representation in different, spectrums of society, right? Now, on issues to do with gender-based violence, of course, K24 has you covered. So this November, from the 10th of November rather, K24 will bring you a powerful edition of Get Real, broadcasting live from Kisumu City. And we'll be diving deep into a topic that affects us all, and that is gender-based violence. You'll hear from survivors, activists, and community leaders as they share their stories, struggles, and solutions to ending violence in our homes, schools, and also communities. So join us as we tackle tough questions, uncover hidden truths, and inspire real change. Get Real, where voices are heard, stories are shared, and solutions are found. So don't miss this important conversation, only on K24 TV. And of course, it will be spearheaded by an incredible team that includes Remy Majala and Majibu Kesau. My name is Brian Amwai. Let's do this again when God says we do. Have a self-loving day.